Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zara and today I'm going to be doing a review of Too Like the Lightning by Ada Palmer. This is the first book in the Terra Ignota series and this is a sci-fi book that is very philosophical and is one that has been on my radar for quite a while. I have been so excited to read this book because before I came into it, I had a feeling that I was going to really love it. But I have to say, I think it's been a couple of days since I finished the book now at the time that I'm filming this video. And I feel very mixed on it. So I thought it would be quite good to talk about it. Before I jump into my review, let's do a quick summary of the plot. This is a very dense, very cerebral and very ambitious sci-fi book that is set in the 25th century. And in this future, the world is governed not by nations, but by these kind of organizations or groups called hives. And they're essentially philosophical and political affiliations people choose freely, replacing the concept of nationality, which is such a fascinating idea. I love that idea. Such a cool idea for a story. And technology has solved many of our kind of traditional problems. As an example, there's like instantaneous global transport, there's near universal literacy, and there's widespread peace, at least on the surface. It's a future that I think many of us would probably be quite interested in experiencing ourselves, but what this book does is a really good job of sort of critiquing the systems and how those systems also potentially have issues. The story is narrated by a character called Mycroft Canner, and he is a convicted criminal turned servant historian who serves powerful political figures and offers us, the reader, an account of world-shaking events. And at the centre of all of this, there is this discovery of a child who goes by the name of Bridger, who appears to have the miraculous power to make inanimate objects come to life. That is a phenomenon that could potentially destabilise the world order, the balanced global order. So absolutely fascinating. This is the plot of like a perfect book for me at the very least. Like, it's got all the things I want in it. It's got sci-fi elements to it. It's very philosophical, very character driven, and there was just so much going for it. So I think let's now go into my kind of thoughts about the book, what I liked about it, what I struggled with, and then I'll give you a quick summary at the end as well. So I think let's kick off with writing, as I always do. I think her writing is very much unapologetically literary. It reads more like, you know, kind of 18th century Enlightenment philosophy rather than traditional sci-fi, and that is very much intentional. It's written almost like a history book. Our narrator, Mycroft, is deeply influenced by Voltaire, Rousseau, a bunch of other philosophers, and he often breaks the fourth wall to comment on how he's telling the story, also giving us some reflections on things like morality, and he's also there to manipulate our perception of what is actually happening in the book as well. He's incredibly unreliable, but it's very intimate, it's quite theatrical, it's also very unsettling, and I think particularly at the start of the book, you kind of feel like you're being let in on a secret, but you're not being told the whole truth, which is always really exciting. I think her writing style is very rich, and it's rich with allusion, lots of philosophical digressions, and there are also some kind of formal quirks. So as an example, we have a lot of kind of commentary, I guess you could call it, around kind of like pronouns and gender swapping. We also get these random kind of historical asides. Like, she plays around a lot with the text, and I really like it when writers kind of really experiment with different types of writing style within one book. Like, I think it's really hard to do, but I think if you can get it right, it can work really well, and I think she managed to pull it off in this book. It is an intellectual feast, but it's definitely not a book for casual reading, and I think this is the sort of book that I'm definitely going to reread because it is quite dense and it is quite difficult to read at times. It's not the sort of book that you should read when you're tired. I definitely had to reread parts because I was reading this book generally in the evenings, and generally by the time I get to the evening, I'm quite tired naturally. And there were times where I had to pause, go read another book and then come back to it, or I just had to reread because it's a very intellectual book and it requires you to be switched on at all times. I think if you enjoy being challenged by the way a story is told, if you like Baker, Woolf, some of the other really great authors that I've talked about on my channel, then I think this is the sort of book that could be really rewarding for you. If not, I would actually recommend just staying away from this book because it's not a light, fluffy read, and it's not, I wouldn't even say it's like, it's not even a simple read. Like, this is a very complex book and it requires time and attention. Let's talk about pacing. So This is a super slow book. Very, very slow, especially in the first half, like not much happens. Palmer spends a lot of time building the world through dialogue, ritual, and philosophy rather than action. So there's not much that happens, honestly, which I personally don't mind. I love it, in fact. But I can totally understand for a lot of people that might be quite difficult. There are long stretches where very little kind of happens in the traditional sense. Much of the tension comes from what might happen, not what is actually happening in that moment necessarily. But I think if you're patient, this is the sort of book that really rewards patience. The layers really start to build. There's subtle political maneuvering, secrets, and philosophical undercurrents that really accumulate. And by the time that we get to the second half, the stakes have really risen and become clearer and the pace picks up. But even then, this book will demand your full attention. You really need to pay attention to this book, I think, to really get what Palmer is trying to kind of gift us in a way. Make sure that you're kind of ready for that, I think. Like, I think this is the sort of book that is like a real commitment if you want to get the most out of it. Let's talk a little bit about characters. I'm only going to talk about our main character and then I'll talk briefly about the secondary cast characters. But I think Mycroft is a great character, great narrator. He's super fascinating and he's quite unsettling to kind of hear what he's saying to us. And he's very intelligent. The way he speaks is lyrical, but he's also very manipulative. He's had a horrifying past and he also has a deep sense of servitude. You're never quite sure whether to trust him. And I think the author really uses that uncertainty to really great effect. The secondary cast of characters is super diverse and like very wide. There's a very wide cast of characters. I really think this book should have had a character list. It would have really benefited from it. We have everyone from world leaders to religious visionaries to political tacticians to philosophers to revolutionaries. Just everybody is great. And they all represent different factions and ideologies, and many are only partially understood through Mycroft's lens. And while this makes the world feel super rich and complex, it does also make you struggle to track who's who. I've barely read this with Matt and he said the same thing. Like, I think we both really wanted a character list, and I hope this has a character list in the future books because it can be a struggle to keep track of everything. Let's talk about themes, probably one of my favourite aspects of this book. Again, I think this is where Palmer really excels, and you can tell she's the sort of author that is less interested in action and much more in exploring kind of big, controversial, thorny ideas, including everything from utopianism versus hidden power. So in this world, it appears very peaceful, but behind the scenes, things are kind of crumbling because of manipulation and hierarchy, and there's schisms, and it's all a bit of a mess. We also have religion versus taboo. Religion is technically outlawed in this 25th century future that we are presented with, but spirituality and metaphysics are still haunt people, and in a way some of the characters really seek out spirituality, which is quite interesting. The presence of Bridger, the miracle child that I mentioned in my brief plot summary, raises really deep theological questions in a post or supposedly post-religious society, which is quite an interesting contention to witness. We also have things around like the nature of truth and narrative. Through Mycroft, the author really explores how stories and narratives are constructed, remembered, and also distorted. His role as historian and unreliable narrator forces us to question everything he tells us. And then lastly, I'll touch upon the exploration of like gender, identity, and power. This book plays quite provocatively with gendered language, using he, him pronouns, even for clearly female characters, and blurring binary categories, which was quite interesting to see. It forces us to rethink assumptions about identity, respect, and social structures, which she did it in quite a subtle way, and I quite appreciated it. There's more, but like I think those are like the main ones that I really picked up on, and I'm quite curious to see how those are further explored in the later books, because I feel like we're really just scratching the surface. A couple of other things that I'm going to mention. So I think the world building was quite exceptional. I think the depth of the political, philosophical, and cultural design in this novel is like honestly quite mind-blowing. Palmer, I believe, is a historian themselves, and she has imagined a future shaped by Enlightenment thought, you know, whether that's global mobility, ideological realignment, and it feels realistic, it feels plausible, but also quite strange. But she has built it so meticulously that it's just honestly quite astonishing. It just feels so real, you know? It's crazy. Like, I don't know how she was able to write this book. Like, you can, that being said, you can tell this book was written by a historian. Like, if I didn't know she was a historian prior to me reading it, I would have probably figured that out after, because it's very meticulous in how it sets out what it's trying to achieve. The other thing I will say before I finish off my final thoughts is that I think accessibility wise, I don't think this book is for everyone. I think a very certain type of person is going to really like this book. It rewards a patient reader, a curious reader, and I think if you are the sort of reader that has a high tolerance for complexity and ambiguity, it's going to be an absolute treasure. I think if you don't like those things, then you are going to probably hate this book. I think two authors that I think I've briefly mentioned already that are a good signal as to whether you would like this book are Baker and Woolf. Like, I think if you like Woolf, you will love this book. I think if you like Baker, you will love this book. There's probably other authors that I can reference, but at the very least, those are two that really come to mind. Even Daniel Abraham I would throw in there. With one of his big fantasy series. Like, it's very slow, it requires patience, and it requires you to trust the author, and thankfully this is an author that you can trust to do the job well. So overall, this is probably one of the most intellectually ambitious books I've ever read, to be honest. Not even just science fiction, but just ever. It's not fast, it's not easy, it's not emotionally straightforward. It is extremely original, it's very thoughtful, and it is beautifully, beautifully crafted. I think if you like sci-fi that is fast-paced and super plot-driven, this book is going to absolutely frustrate you. If you're drawn to more speculative ideas, speculative fiction that challenges your brain, requires you to engage with history and philosophy, then I think you will absolutely love this book. This is the sort of book that I don't really know how to rate, because there were parts of this book that I found quite hard to read, again, just because it demands so much from the reader. But at the same time, I just think it's such an amazing book, and I don't think I should necessarily penalise the author for that. So look, I'm not going to give it a rating right now, but I think it's probably been one of the most rewarding books I've read this year. But it was also one of the most difficult books that I've read this year. So if that sounds interesting to you, do please consider picking it up. I'm definitely going to read books 2 and 3. I think it'll be a while though, probably at some point later on this year. It's just because I've got a ton of other books that I want to get through first. And I want to make sure that I'm in the right mood when I pick up the second book. Because like I said, you really need to be switched on, and you can't be like sleeping halfway through. Like, it's just not going to work. So yeah, definitely going to pick them up, but it's not going to be anytime soon, I think. And by any time soon, I mean in the next like month or 2 or 3. Let me know down below in the comments if you've read this book. I don't know a ton of people who've read it. And if you have and you haven't commented, please do. If you have and you have commented, also please do. If you do have any questions as well, let me know and I will try my best to answer them. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you like this type of content, I do reviews every single week. Please do consider subscribing, and I will see you in my next one. Thanks for watching, folks. Stay safe, take care, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye.